All right, 2:34. Welcome back to the program. Thomas Van Flein is my guest via the telephone. Mr. Van Flein is the legal counsel, personal legal counsel for Governor Sarah Palin and the family, of course. Tom, welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Lord, going down here, we're talking about the Sean Cockerham's publication of some of the expenses. He claims it was $300,000 in total that the personnel board has expended in the case or in these ethics complaints. Do you agree with that number in totality?
Well, the exact number is $296,042. So
right.
If you're asking me, is that?
Yeah.
I think he's rough estimating it. But those numbers come from the board itself.
Right.
Does not include all ethics complaints, as far as I can tell.
So if they didn't go through, if something didn't go through the ethics board.
Well, no, what I mean is it was obviously they had to do an accounting as of a certain date.
Right.
That could be February 1st, it could be March 1st. I'm not sure how current that information is. So there may be more because they're still working on matters. There will be more. I can say that for a fact because we know they're working on matters.
There's always rumors that there's more ethics complaints going to be filed. It just seems like, embarrassment doesn't do anything. These people aren't shamed by any of it. They don't seem to be. They seem to be operating in a vacuum. You think most people who file 15 ethics complaints and they all get shot down would somehow, most people kind of, maybe we ought to do something else for a living. But these folks, they don't care. I mean, they just keep coming back. You can shame them all day long, and they just they're like mosquitoes, man. They just keep coming.
Well, and I've said this before, Eddie, and that is this is the tragedy of what's been done. The ethics process has been hijacked for political and partisan purposes, and people with no shame and no decency have filed complaints. There have been a couple people, I think, who had good intentions, by the way. I'm not lumping them all into that category, but I think you're right that the majority of the complainants have had ill motives and don't really care about ethics. They care about getting headlines and smearing Governor Palin. That's what this is about. It's pretty clear and transparent in terms of their motivations, and you can tell by the nature of their allegations how facially frivolous many of them are, just how that reveals their motivation. But my concern has been from the beginning that we have a state that has had in its history extensive legislative corruption, and we need ethics and good ethics laws in this state. We have legislators who went to jail, and maybe one or two still in jail. And in the 80s, the same thing happened.
Yeah.
We need good, open, transparent government.
Absolutely.
And the people who file frivolous accusations like this demean the system and make the whole system lose its credibility.
Yeah.
It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Exactly. Let's see, Representative Bob Lynn has introduced some legislation to make the ethics complaint filing against a sitting legislator and the governor parallel, meaning that you cannot currently, if you file an ethics complaint again, I know you know this, but just for the audience, if you file an ethics complaint against a sitting legislator, you cannot go public with that. If you file it against the governor, you can go public with it. If you file one against this legislator and you do go public with it, they will dismiss. It's my understanding they will dismiss the complaint. And I guess in your legal opinion or personal opinion, whatever you'd like to muster up here, do you think that's a good piece of legislation? Should they be parallel?
Yeah, and let me just point out one other piece of background on that.
Okay.
Also, if you were to file an ethics complaint against the mayor of Anchorage, for example, or any assembly person,
right,
they have the same rule that the state legislature has.
Oh, I see.
And that is, it is actually against the statute in the Executive Branch Act to breach confidentiality. You're not supposed to file a complaint and then talk about it and give media interviews.
I see.
There just doesn't happen to be a penalty for that. And it's difficult to, you're not going to throw somebody in jail for that.
Right.
I don't think that would be constitutional, and I don't think it would be wise. But what the legislature has determined for itself is that if you're really just filing an accusation to get a headline,
right,
we're going to throw it out. We're not going to deal with it. And that's probably a good policy because, again, we're trying to foster good, solid government. We're not trying to use government prosecutors and the personnel board and headline writers to target partisan attacks.
Yeah.
And so I think Mr. Representative Lynn's bill is on the money in that regard because it's an effort to take the partisanship out of it, because ethics should not know party loyalty. Ethics should be across the board, whether you're a Green Party member or a Republican or a Libertarian or even a Democrat. You should all agree that there are certain boundaries for fair and open government that should be followed.
I think you've, in our prior conversations here, made a distinct point, a distinction of between what the ethics complaints are going on now and what they should be, and that is these are real disagreements with policy. Hey, Governor says, I like the color red. Andre McLeod says, that's an ethics violation. I want to wear a coat. Andre says, that's an ethics violation, when in fact, those are just disagreements.
Correct. The examples of that would be like, hey, she gave an interview in her office to a national media person. I don't like that.
Right.
Or she traveled out of state and gave a speech in Evansville, Indiana. I don't like that. I don't like the topic of her speech. I don't like her position on that topic, and I don't like her leaving the state. So they file ethics complaints with those dislikes. And those are just simple policy disagreements at best. Those are just, hey, vote for somebody else, and if you don't like her stand on a certain issue, that's fair game. Talk about that issue, by the way. But that's not an ethics issue. It has nothing to do with ethics. It has to do with politics.
Let's go a little further in here into Sean Cockerham's blog post, and it says the chronology of the list suggests that the 43,000 could be the complaint where Andre McLeod contended Palin and some staff members used their influence to get a Palin supporter a job in state government. The complaint against Palin was dismissed, but the board investigator did not recommend ethics training. Did recommend ethics training for one of the governor's closest aides. This is also part of the. That's a huge expenditure that Andre McLeod caused there. Why was there so? Do you know? Have you had an opportunity to be able to look at that and see why there was such a huge amount of money spent investigating that to come up with really nothing?
Well, I can tell you, I can give you an educated guess, and that is this. When somebody invokes the machinery of the government, like filing a complaint with the Personnel Board, they're obligated to take it seriously and to look into it and not sweep it under the rug. So even though some of these same people who have filed these same frivolous complaints, when they don't like the result, they say, well, this is just a whitewash. They're just sweeping it under the rug. What you're seeing here is black and white evidence that the Personnel Board did not sweep anything under the rug. They hired professional, independent attorneys, several of whom are Democrats, certainly not the member of party of the governor, and the Personnel Board itself is bipartisan. There's no whitewash here. These are legal fees for attorneys and their staff, like paralegals and associates, who have to go out, and I know for a fact, if the first category is the Lamal complaint, they had to go to Fairbanks, for example, and depose people and get evidence.
Wow.
And that takes time, and time is money in the law, and it takes costs. There's airfare and hotel and everything else. So when you file a complaint like that, the wheels of justice start rolling, and it's expensive.
And that's one